Joe Kleine just took a bite out of the taco. That's what he's doing.
Bird got the shot over the top of Ellison, and Joe Kleine just came storming in.
Holy cow, this guy really is something else.
Our next guest is a McDonald's All-American. He fouled out Akeem Olajuwon in college, and he played alongside and against Michael Jeffrey Jordan. Let's welcome in former Razorback Joe Kleine into the program. Joe, appreciate the time. I got to ask, when you guys were playing on that 1984 U.S. Olympic team, how many times did you bring up to Michael what happened in Pine Bluff earlier that year?
I never brought it up, but he'd bring it up a couple times, and I'd just look at him and smile.
Oh man!
I knew how he was. I mean, he was, as you can see from the show last night. I mean, he was the ultimate competitor, and I knew that it just ate at his crawl. That every time he looked at me and Alvin, he knew less than a year before that we beat him, and so he just kind of said something like, "Yeah, that was a great day, wasn't it?" Or man, sorry that you feel that way, or
And Joe,
didn't have to say anything because I knew it bugged the hell out of me.
Joe, what's cool about that team is you guys also, not only did you get to play along some great players like Patrick Ewing, Michael Jordan, and others, you guys got to play against the 84 All-Stars. What was it like to play a team that was comprised of the best basketball players in the world at the time early on in what led to be your NBA career?
Well, I mean, for a lot of us, it was kind of just, you're kind of all of a sudden, you watched Larry Bird and you watched all these Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas and all these guys. And, that's when the NBA was starting to get some, a lot of more TV play because of Larry and Magic. And, we had a distinct advantage in that, they were flying in the day of the game and they were given a uniform and they were just going out there kind of playing pickup. And, we had been together for months. And we had a good stack of guys, and we were very excited and motivated to play them. And, I'm not as sure as they were. I mean, they were glad to be there, but I don't think, after an 82 game season, some of them, like Larry and them, just got done playing in playoffs in June. I don't know how fired up they were to be, playing against us. So we had a distinct advantage for sure.
Joe, as you watched the part one of The Last Dance last night, you had a front row seat for a lot of this. Your thoughts and how accurate is this first two installments of what the world saw last night about the Chicago Bulls and the making of all those championships?
I mean, it is spot on. I mean, it is. I mean, I was sitting there and I was like, "Oh man, I forgot that." And I went. I remembered Scotty being hurt. I didn't remember it being as severe and as long. But then as the documentary was going on, I was like, yeah, he was out for a while. Yeah, we started off 4-4, and we were 0-4 on the road and had to fight for our lives to beat a bad Clipper team on the road. And I was looking at some of the scores they were showing of the games and how we were struggling to score without Scotty. And just, it was spot on. I mean, I think I didn't see anything in there that was, it was even educational for me, and I was there. And so, I mean, I thought I thought it was fantastic.
Former Razorback, former Chicago Bull Joe Kleine with us here on the Morning Rush. Was it really as tenuous and as tenuous as it was documented last night between the general manager Jerry Krause and the star players Michael Jordan and Pippen and Phil Jackson on that team, primarily Phil Jackson?
I think that's the thing they got the most correct, or they hit it the best, is because I was kind of wondering how they were going to do that, and I mean, it was every bit of that. I mean, it was every bit of that. I mean, it was, and again, a guy coming in from the outside in. I thought I was going to Shangri-La, you know. I mean, 5 championships in 7 years, going for 6. And, you know, you'd hear a little bit of rumblings on the outside being on other teams because of contract squabbles and things like that, but you didn't know how deep it ran and how contentious it was and how personal a lot of these things were between, you know, basically, you know, the three, you know, the 3 guys, Phil, Michael, and Scotty, and management, you know, Jerry Krause and Jerry Reinsdorf. I mean, you didn't know that until you got in it. And I mean, they really did it. I think that's the best thing they did last night, was show the divide.
Joe, this is Clay Henry. I've spent the last couple of weeks talking to a lot of former players and coaches, Pat Foster, James Dickey, Ron Brewer, Jimmy Counts, who's a player and a coach, about Coach Sutton going into the Hall of Fame. And they talked about what they learned as far as man defense and the positioning by the inch and how to set screens, angles of screens, and know just your thoughts, Joe, on how you learned defense from Coach Sutton and how that carried you forward in your career.
Well, you know, Clay, I came from when I came from Notre Dame, it was just the opposite. I mean, I grew up in high school. I was taught man-to-man defense, and it was a big deal for us. Then I went to Notre Dame, and, you know, Digger kind of fashioned himself as a football coach. I mean, we weren't in a conference, and so he could kind of make his schedule the way he wanted to make it. And, you know, we would play a really big game or a semi-big game once a week. We might play Maryland on Saturday, DePaul the following Saturday. And so all week long, it kind of was like being a football mentality. We would change our defense. You know, we would be making a game plan for that particular game week to week and tweaking things and doing things and not overhauling it, but it was never the same. Well, you got there with Coach Sutton, and I mean, it was, you know, he taught you 5 or 6 things about positioning, getting towards the ball, you know, how to fight through screens, get through screens, just, you know, but it was drilled in you over and over and over and over again. And it wasn't anything earth-shattering. It wasn't anything complicated, but it was taught, like, as you were saying, to the detail, and it was reinforced every day. So you had 5 or 6 things that, you know, he was looking for defensively every day, and he would reinforce those to you if you weren't doing them right, and that made it easier, you know, over time to become a really good defensive team because you weren't trying to trick anybody. You weren't trying to do anything that nobody's ever seen before. You were just trying to do what you could do and do it better than anybody else. And I think that was the beauty of Coach Sutton. I think it was the same way offensively. Our inbounds plays, our sideline out-of-bounds plays. Everybody knew what we were going to do. I mean, you guys were sitting over there going, oh, Scott Hastings is taking the ball out. Okay, he's going to throw it, and then he's going to get a pick, and he's going to come out the other side, and they're going to reverse the ball, and he's going to get a wide-open 18-footer. And they knew it, too. And we would run the play, and Scott would get a wide-open shot on the other side. And it was you know. And
what I also knew is if you got to the other side and it wasn't open, you would reverse it, and it would be open. Just going to keep reversing it, keep pitching it, and then eventually the other team would get tired. Yeah. So I'm going to fast forward you to, 30 years later. I'm not trying to make you sound old. I'm old.
Well, I am.
Yeah, I'm sure the knees, they creak, right, Joe? They creak?
They'll wake you up. If I get up in the middle of the night, I wake up the house. The dog barks at me.
Yeah. So Eric Musselman, in his defensive philosophies, do you see a little Coach Sutton out there?
Absolutely. I mean, but you can see that, and I've been lucky enough to sit in on a couple practices. And again, he's not trying to trick anybody. He's looking at his team, and I think, and watching him and seeing how he had to deal with injuries and do some things this year, he was always doing what was best for the group of guys he had. So, I mean, he wasn't, like later on in the year, all of a sudden when Isaiah Joe was out a couple of times, all of a sudden you saw him just double teaming the ball when it got across half court, And I mean, you didn't see that earlier in the year, but he's like, hey, we got to do this to help our offense or, disrupt them, maybe get some points off of defense because they were struggling to score without Isaiah Joe. And it wasn't anything, earth-shattering. It wasn't tricking anybody. It was like, go double team the ball, rotate to the open man, get your hands up, talk, and that it was very, very simple, but you could see they were very well drilled in doing the simple things defensively, and that's what Coach Sutton wants.
Speaking with former Arkansas Razorback Joe Kleine here on the Morning Rush. Joe, you mentioned Coach Digger Phelps being at Notre Dame the year you spent over there. After you decided to transfer to Arkansas, would you say that's probably the best basketball decision that you've ever made?
Without a doubt. I mean, and it was the hardest. I mean, because I still love Notre Dame. I grew up Catholic. I still am Catholic. My mother and father, I mean, we prayed the rosary. We did all the, still do to this day. So, I mean, it was a very, I remember making that decision and how I think for the first time in my life, I really felt stress. I never, you're a young kid. You don't know what stress is. You don't, feel your stomach churning over stress. You felt it churning over excitement of playing a game or things like that. But you didn't feel that worry and that cloud over your head or that weight. And it was a very, very, very hard decision to make because of my roots and because I loved Notre Dame. I still love Notre Dame. But it wasn't working with Coach Phelps. Coach Phelps is a good guy. He was a good family man. I haven't kept up with him, so I don't know what's going on in his life. But it wasn't anything personal with him. It wasn't working. I didn't like how I was being coached. I didn't feel a connection with my coach. And when I came to Arkansas, I mean, that was the kind of environment I needed to be in. I think that I fit the school better being from a small country town in Slater. I mean, Coach Sutton was a coach like my high school coach, and he was very direct and to the point, and that's the kind of house I was raised in, as my father was an ex-World War II Marine. So, I mean, I just think it was and I was very close to coming to Arkansas out of high school. I mean, it was a lot closer than people thought. But in the end, my faith kind of pushed me over the edge. And Sean, when he got into the Hall of Fame the other day, he called me, and Sean and I were talking, and his dad was there, and he's like, if you'd have come to Arkansas out of high school, we would have won a national championship. And I'm just like, yeah. And he goes, and if you were to come out of high school, and my dad would have got in the Hall of Fame 10 years earlier, and they were kind of giving me the business. And I said, well, I made a choice. I chose God over Coach Sutton, and I was wrong. I'm sorry.
That's good.
Oh, man.
Oh, that's rich.
I haven't heard, Joe, I don't think I've heard that story before, so that's pretty good. I was reading, Joe, a piece in The Athletic talking about Larry Bird the other day, and you actually gave some insight, gave some stories to Larry Bird. And when it comes to playing with Michael Jordan, when it comes to playing with Larry Bird, when it comes to some of the great players that you've ever played with, who is the best trash talker?
Oh, Larry. Michael was good, but Larry did it so subtle, and Larry had a wit about him that was just, it's just like the other day. I mean, I sent him, somebody sent me a quarantine picture of a grave being dug in their backyard, and they said my wife's taking up gardening, and so I sent it to Larry, and within 30 seconds I said I saw my wife Dana digging this in the backyard, and within 30 seconds he texts me back going, "Can I help?" So, I mean, his wit was just is just great. He has a great dry sense of humor, and I just, his trash talking was quiet. He would do it leaning down against you on the free throw line. He would, walk by the bench. In practice, it was 10 times worse in practice because it was more private and everything was more personal. But it was all good, and I mean, it was funny. But Michael was good too. But Larry's had a little more fun in it. Sometimes Michael's was a little more right to the heart, So I mean, I enjoyed Larry's better.
Joe Kleine with us here on the Morning Rush. Help fill in the cracks. I've heard part of this story, but you were at the center of it in one of Coach Sutton's practices where he decided to line everybody up and practice taking charges that day or delivering charges, and he wasn't quite happy with the way you had taken a charge in the game, so thought y'all needed a little practice on that.
Well, no, I just got back from the Olympics, and and I was walking around campus, and nothing stank, and I was the man, and I think we were in practice, and guys coming down the lane, and I bailed out. I didn't step in and take it. And again, as we talked earlier, there were 5 or 6 things defensively for Coach Sutton that you were going to do. I mean, it was, you're not bailing out on a charge. And so, he lined everybody up on the left, and I had to slide across the lane to the block and take a hit. And then he lined them all the way up on the right. I had to slide across to the right and take a hit from everybody on both sides of the floor. And then he just kind of looked over at me and he goes, I just wanted to make sure that that gold medal doesn't keep you from taking a hit in the chest and falling down and taking a charge. And I was like, no, sir. And so from then on, if I was walking through the BA and somebody bumped into me, I was going down. I was laying out, man. It didn't take anything. I was going down.
So, Joe, tell us what Coach Sutton going into the Hall of Fame means to the ex-players. And I kind of know, but I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, man, it's family. He's a second dad to all of us. A lot of some of us even more so. He is. Everything that I have. Along with my family, I look to Coach Sutton. His leadership and making me a man and talking to me and never demeaning us, and the family atmosphere he built at Fayetteville, I thought was, it's what all great programs and great coaches do. They create a atmosphere to where, I feel like I never played with Ron Brewer, but when I see him, I feel like he's my brother. Same with Sidney, Marvin, and I know Nolan's guys feel the same way about, Nolan, and that, they didn't necessarily play together, but because of the culture and the things that these great coaches created, that, they create a family, and that's where your programs grow, and that's how your programs become great programs, because you have great men leading them and players following and believing and willing to do anything they can for the family. And, that was Coach Sutton.
Speaking with Joe Kleine here on the Morning Rush, former Arkansas Razorback. Joe, as we close you down here, watching this last night, and you talked about remembering, and I saw that you put out your Last Dance hat on social media earlier this week. How significant is it for you to be on that last championship team?
I was very fortunate. God was looking out for me. I was into my 13th year. I wasn't very good anymore. I mean, I didn't have a lot of juice left in the tank. I was, again, going into my 13th year in the league, and I was a role player, and I got the opportunity to be a part of a dynasty, a very small part, but I got to witness it and be a part of it, and just watching that, last night, and just all the friends and the people on Twitter and people texting me during the show, and then my big old head gets in there for a little cameo there for a second, and everybody starts texting me, going, "I see you," and "Look at you," and again, I feel very, very lucky, and I feel that way about my whole career. I mean, you look at where I came from, Slater, Missouri, just, and then what I got to do is just, it's a ride I could have never imagined. And then to get to be, again, a very small part of that ride, that last dance ride with that, with that crew of players, I mean, I just sit back and go, man, how lucky am I?
Big Joe from Slater Mo, Joe Kleine, former Arkansas Razorback, longtime NBA basketball player. Joe, thank you so much for talking to us this morning. I really appreciate you making some time for us.
Oh, you're welcome, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, Joe.
Great insight. A lot of Arkansas representation last night. Yeah. We heard from Sidney Moncrief on The Last Dance, Joe Kleine also in there, and then Scottie Pippen from Hamburg, Arkansas.
Yeah. So big Arkansas ties to that bull.